So I'm recording my homily for the fourth Sunday of Easter, and I am still on my vacation, which I just started about a week ago. I was at Crater Lake last week, if you remember that, and since then I went to visit some family in Nevada, and I'm now in the Redwoods in California, and I've always loved coming to the Redwoods. It's hard to believe me that behind me, this is one tree. This is one tree. I mean, it's just absolutely astounding just how massive they are. As I was kind of walking through the trails here, I was thinking about, the story The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien. Part of the story is a story about the trees and the trees in the forest, and some of the forests have grown incredibly wild and dangerous. And these trees in this forest actually have tree herders, and so these are shepherds, if you will, of trees, and these trees can move, and the forests have become really, really angry and dark and really dangerous places, and the tree herders, they're called Ents, E-N-T. They're kind of asleep. They're not really paying attention. They don't really feel like there's a whole lot to do, and so the trees just kind of go wild. They just and everything becomes kind of just like anarchy, and the trees are not. That doesn't sound very good. They're not happy. Not that trees can be happy, but it's very dark and almost sinister like, and so through the story is these two hobbits. Hobbits obviously are very small and kind of fragile. As they're going through the forest immediately wants to kill them, and so there was one point where they're just sitting down on some roots of trees, and the roots start trying to take them in and kill them, and the tree herders come in and save them. But you get this feeling like these tree herders are just really not very good shepherds. Things have just gone wild. That's what I'm looking for. That's the term. Things have just gone wild. Right, it's you could almost imagine if you walk into a daycare and the kids are just wild and there's no order to anything. You probably wouldn't want to have your kids in that daycare, right? Okay. So today is Good Shepherd Sunday, and the gospel that we heard, or that you heard at Mass, is about Jesus as a good shepherd, and so. Just talk a little bit about some of the qualities of a good shepherd. So a good shepherd is obviously not going to allow his sheep to just run wild. That's not what a good shepherd does. And so the sheep, when they're led correctly, they know the voice of their shepherd, right? And as it says in the gospel today, a good shepherd knows his sheep, but then can walk ahead of the sheep, and the sheep will follow. And so you're getting a really beautiful sense of leadership that even parents can institute in their families, that being a good shepherd in your family, being a good leader of your kids, is not being a helicopter parent, right? A helicopter parent is a parent who hovers over their kids and doesn't want them to make any mistake whatsoever and makes every decision for their kids and just smothers their kids. And so their kids never grow up to have the ability to follow. They don't have the ability to lead, but they definitely don't have the ability to follow either. And so we have a whole generation of kids who are kind of dysfunctional because of that, right? And so to be a good shepherd means that we've created an environment of sufficient order and love that allows us to follow. And so Jesus as our good shepherd is not hovering over us. He's not making all our decisions for us, but he's out in front of us. And so we then have the obligation and the duty and the responsibility to follow him. This tree has been here a long time. There's an order and a beauty to everything that God creates. And God desires in our own lives that we obey, because he gave us free will. But that we grow strong, right? that our faith looks like this. That it's not fragile and weak and prone to breaking or prone to leaning or being overtaken by, as the Gospels say, being overtaken by the weeds in the world. This tree is strong, and there's some others that are around here that are just as big. And they provide stability. And so we want to be those kinds of shepherds. We want to be the shepherds that in our community provide stability, and that means that sometimes, just like Jesus, it means we're going to have to lead and make tough decisions and say things sometimes people don't want to hear. And you can see in our world that it's almost like there's this rebellion against any order or against any leadership or any authority. And it's almost like our world is hostile to even the idea of there being a shepherd, somebody who has authority over them. And so in the end, what we end up creating is a forest that's hostile and that's wild and dangerous and dark. And we're seeing that in our communities. I notice more and more, everywhere I've driven on my trip, drugs are everywhere. I mean, you see people out walking around just high on meth or whatever, and it's really sad. It's like we're Fangorn Forest, from the Lord of the Rings. And so I'll tell you what, though, what wakes up the Ents, the tree herders, and so the tree herders have become kind of slackers, and they're not really paying attention, and they're not really competent, and it all changes, though, when they reach the edge of the forest, because they're taking these hobbits, and they realize that part of their forest has been decimated, has been completely destroyed by this army, right? And it took that for this tree herder to wake up and say, we've really screwed up. And so finally, as they begin to kind of get their nerve, it took a disaster. It took them to see the destruction before they did anything. But then they got their courage, and then they became able to lead the trees, to have the trees do what they're supposed to do, right? And so I say that about us, moms and dads and priests and all of us as shepherds. We look at our world and it's like we're just letting it go, right? But eventually there's going to be something. Something's got to wake us up and say, we have to act. God didn't create our towns and our cities to become places where people just fall into drugs and all kinds of bad things. And so there's an incredibly important need for good shepherds. Now, having said that, I do realize that in my own parish, I know that they announced this weekend, at least at some of the parishes that I'm at, that I'm going to be leaving July 1st. And this last year has been a phenomenal year for me. Speaking of shepherds, I don't know if the lay people really realize how much you shepherd us as priests, but this year has been really wonderful for me, a really good year of healing, and it's just been a delight. And so I'm going to be going July 1st to become pastor at St. Mary's in Marysville, and I'm looking forward to that. That should be good, and I know the Holy Spirit will be working through all of that. And Marysville is actually not too far from where I'm at right now, up in Mount Vernon. So, having said that, we need good shepherds as priests. We need good priests. We need more priests, but we need more good priests who are good shepherds. And so I ask you, as one homework assignment, please be praying for good priests and good shepherds. And as we're ordaining this new group of priests in June, that they too will be able to take on that mantle and that role. And pray for your children, pray for the children in our parish, that we can find good shepherds as priests, as ministerial priests, to help lead us and guide us. For moms and dads, I want you to know I'm always praying for you. And it gives me no greater joy than to see a mom and a dad be good shepherds for their children, and to have God first, and to show them and guide them how to be people of faith. All right. God bless you. Take care.